Welcome back everyone to theCUBE here in our New York Stock Exchange studio. I'm John Furrier, host of theCUBE. This is our East Coast studio overlooking the show floor. Part of our new brand, the NYSE Wired program is CUBE Original, plus the open source community of leaders are part of that, curated by Brian Bauman at the NYSE. We got a CUBE alumni going back to the origination of theCUBE, 17 years, Sanjay Poonen, CEO of Cohesity. Sanjay, great to see you in our new set. What do you think? Not too shabby?
It's amazing, I got to tell you. I knew you when you were small time in this small little place in SAP, and I may have been your first or second or third interview. Yeah. I used to come here to NYC to talk to CNBC. I love this place. Great. Yeah. Congratulations on all your
And how did you describe me to Lynn Martin, the CEO? What did you call me?
I said, Palantir and John, I was told, they are, two very interesting characters. Forget exactly what it is. They are, and you are.
Jim Cramer, you mentioned Jim Cramer reference.
Yeah, you are the Cramer of tech. Okay, Kramer has a more business perspective on everything.
His stock picks are great, legendary, got a great community.
You've done it well, and you've covered SAP, VMware, AWS, Dell. I've been to many of the events. Yeah. You and Dave Vellante do a great job.
Well, I appreciate it, Sanjay. You're a special friend of theCUBE. More importantly, we've been following your career from SAP, of which Bill McDermott's now the CEO, was a co-CEO of SAP, and now he's the CEO of ServiceNow.
Good friend.
Very timely to get into that discussion. Progression through VMware, where you transform VMware, set the agenda on their growth strategy, and now at Cohesity as the Chief Executive Officer, and now with the combination with Veritas. You told me in theCUBE, better together, 1 + 1 is 5. I think it might have been 5 or 3 or 4.
I said 11.
11, okay.
1 + 1 equals 1, 1, 1, 1. There you go.
So a lot's going on. The performance is great. Congratulations. You're in New York for an event. You have news. So I want to get into the news real quick. Then I want to get into what you see your strategies. This is our cybersecurity leaders. You had some news with ServiceNow and a variety of other select targeted ecosystem winners. Take us through the news you had today with ServiceNow.
Yeah, John, it's been a great year. It's been about a year since we finished the acquisition of Veritas. It's gone really well. We're making our numbers. We're the number 1 market share. So Cohesity's gone from number 7 in the space to number 1. And we're building a rule of 40 type of company. Very strong success in the Fortune 500. 70% of the Fortune 500 are our customers. Extremely strong in banking, public sector, healthcare, telco, and technology firms. So we had a big event here in New York, and a little bit like the Rolling Stones tour. We're going from New York, Paris, Singapore, 3 events, bringing our customers here with hundreds in the room and then thousands and tens of thousands watching on live stream. We think that's kind of the new model of how I think some of these things are going to play out. And we announced some strategic news around the notion of how AI and agents can be used for good, and how do we play defense when they're used for bad. Okay, think of it that way. There's a paradox of both those. I'll get to the good part in a second. But the agent resilience story was a key part of what resonated, and we made a strategic announcement with ServiceNow, where what they are building is an agent control tower for a place where you can build, register, manage, secure, and observe agents. And that agent control tower, if one of those agents go awry, remember that sort of fat finger delete of a file you had in the past, but this time it's not a human, it's a non-human doing that? They would detect that, and they will send us a signal, and we're just basically a platform that's built for zero trust, immutable. We can then restore the data to the previous point in time, because we have all of that data available to you. We announced that with ServiceNow, Bill McDermott and I were quoted. I put out a blog post on LinkedIn, and he echoed that to his community. Our people were excited about that, and we also had an announcement with Datadog. But that was the first. I've got a few other things, but that was the first major piece.
I want to get into this ServiceNow because they've been doing on a tear lately with agents. Obviously, their business platform, been a great business model. Been following them as well. Agents are particular. Everyone loves them. They're going wild. They're running wild. The number 1 conversation is tracing, observability, tracking, and then trust. Okay, is it explainable? So in the enterprise, these are the 2 hot buttons that people are talking about. Some say guardrails, but really it comes down to, can I observe them and manage them, metrics to that? And then 2, are they trusted? Can I explain where it came from to manage around hallucinations? This is a huge factor. How does that relate to the Cohesity ServiceNow story? And what's your role in that agent, protect, secure scale?
Yeah, so we are a data resilience platform. So we have 200 exabytes of the world's data. And by the way, that number is significantly bigger by a factor of 5 or 10 than all our competitors put together. So all of the largest companies store their historic data. Secondary data, backup data is just a time series index. in an immutable, secure fashion of everything you have, especially if your retention requirements are forever. So we're not the platform to build, manage, secure, register and observe those agents. In fact, some of our competitors built an agent cloud or acquired an agent cloud. We think that's an utter waste of time and money. The companies who are going to do that are going to be companies like ServiceNow, like Datadog, like AWS that has Agent Core, like Microsoft that has Agent 365, like Google who have Agent Foundry, CrowdStrike bought a company called Pangea, Palo Alto. They're all focused on some aspect of that agent platform, okay? So we went to each of them, starting with ServiceNow, because if you think about agents and managing and securing and observing those, it's like a CMDB problem. If you are a CMDB, which is what ServiceNow does, think of agents as just being one more asset that they're tracking. And Bill made it very clear to me, we intend to be the agent control tower of the enterprise. So we said, listen, that's great. We're going to integrate with you. So where you see an anomaly because of an agent doing something, and the beautiful thing about Cohesity, because we were a platform, we could integrate into them with our APIs in a matter of days.
I want to just interrupt you for a second because you mentioned CMDB. Explain what that is. People might not know what the acronym is. It is really the database for the configurations.
There you go.
Configuration management database.
Something like that. I forgot
but basically, it's where all the files are that configure the route, the paths, the static rules, the rules.
You could think of it like the SAP for IT. It's an ERP system for IT. You store all your configs and your CMDB. This is what Remedy was in the past. You remember those old days. ServiceNow has modernized us for the cloud. But when you track your assets and you track your IT workflows, you do that with SAP. Sorry, it's ServiceNow. ServiceNow has become the SAP of IT, okay, so to think, right? So if you do that same process with financials with SAP, you're doing that with IT with ServiceNow. So agents are just another IT workload that you're going to track within their platform. The question is, will they build a rich enough platform to build, register, manage, secure, and observe agents? And they're well on that way with the agent control tower. Now, they won't be the only company, but I think they are a leading company to be that, and that's why we picked them first.
Yeah, so it's kind of like an agentic infrastructure. I was talking about this with another guest earlier on today around how you got agents and AI native software layers, and people using all kinds of code assistants and co-pilots and all that stuff. But the infrastructure piece kind of feels like cloud native, but it's mostly AI-like infrastructure where when you inject intelligence, then you have a generative, as Jensen always says, generative, not static rules. So this notion of a config file, which we've seen security breach, I didn't update the patch, or that broke the rules were broken. The agents have to respond to the intelligence. So how does that translate into the cyber resilience? Because you have to, one, protect and restore, and data security is the hottest area, and that's what you do.
Right.
So as you have more intelligence, what does that do for your customers and Cohesity?
Yeah, so there's two things. One is when that agent goes awry and it detects data that's been deleted, we can restore and recover any point in time data. But there's another aspect of it. That agent infrastructure is kind of like a virtual machine or a container. It has state to it. It has a vector database or other things. We are now building, we announced, for example, the ability to back up and restore Pinecone, a vector database. We can now restore that entire agent infrastructure, all of that, because it's just another workload that we need to be able to restore fairly well and fast and easily, okay? So as we think about this, we announced both the ability for data resilience, but also the way in which we can do agent resilience for that agent itself.
So agent resilience is basically cyber resilience. It's data, but they're now workers.
Yes.
So when you talk to customers,
non-human identities. That's the way to think about them.
So when you talk to customers, what are they saying in terms of the work that they got to do to prepare? We've seen examples. I was just interviewing at Barcelona at MWC, AT&T senior engineer, and he said, we had 19 miles we open source because the frontier miles couldn't speak telco. They didn't have all the data. And he said when he did the analysis, when they didn't have their agents successful, the grind out of the compliance, the hard work that they do, allowed the agents to scale. Yes. If they didn't do the work on identity or compliance and governance, they went off the rails.
Yes.
What's your view on that, and how are you thinking about that with your world? Because you're protecting all the data.
Yeah, so there's two things that I talked about earlier. One is AI and agents done for good. I want to get that in a second. And how do you protect from the bad? And we've discussed all of what you protect in the bad and how you do it, and partnerships like what we're doing with ServiceNow, Datadog, and others to come. But on the aspect of how you use this for good, we have, for example, transformed our entire engineering effort inside Cohesity with agents to write code faster. One of the things that in our space is very common is you build connectors to many of these source systems. We have thousands of connectors to virtual machines, databases. We're now using vibe coding techniques to build connectors. And it's being done 6 times faster. So that's a productivity improvement, John, to many of the ways in which you build connectors rapidly. We have filed for a patent for how you can use this technology to build connectors. Another thing that we did, and this is where our friend Jensen and NVIDIA comes in, we've been able to say once that data that we are backing and protecting lands on our platform, remember it's a software-defined secure file system, rather than just thinking of it as a storage problem, let's now transform that data to a lake, okay? So we built the world's first vector database, a semantic layer, to interrogate the data that we back up. So for example, imagine our customer has hundreds of millions of PDFs, and you want to write a query which is all of those vendor documents, show me my summary contract terms I've done with them, or maybe it's healthcare records. Any unstructured data, we back up. All the historical data is there. Search it just like you search with ChatGPT. So one of the other things we announced was that product Gaia that we built with NVIDIA. Remember, NVIDIA invested in our company. Jensen talked about us. The only company he invested in 2 years ago, GTC. GTC is coming up in a week. We'll have some more announcements with them. What we did was, we said we're going to open up that layer of Gaia to not just be our own app. We will allow search tools like Glean and Copilot and Amazon Q and whatever have you, or ChatGPT, to talk to our semantic layer. But more importantly, we'll allow our catalog. We announced also a Gaia catalog to talk to Databricks, okay, or to Palantir. So it's opening up that platform now of this data that we have to an ecosystem of data consumers.
Yeah.
And that's going to open up a whole new opportunity for this secondary backup data to participate in Gen AI apps.
You know, I think the ServiceNow announcement really talks about how their AI platform with your product works better together. It's a good announcement. But you mentioned something about the relationship with Palantir and all these different environments. The AI world, it's not your yesterday's data backup and recovery, because you have different modes. You could have this platform, because you're essentially data security.
Yes.
It's
data secure, clean data, right?
It's data security. That's the way I look at it. Maybe it's the wrong category. Or
no, it's good. It's
not a magic quadrant, whatever. But if I'm a customer, might have a little bit of Palantir. I'm going to have Glean. I'm going to have all these systems, and the user journey is multimodal, multi-platform.
We are a source of data to those tools, right? Yes, and you're right. I mean, 20 years ago when we first met, we were talking about business objects, right? And that was the BI system of SAP. Yeah. Now it's Palantir. It's Databricks. We were talking about BW and HANA. Now it's Databricks and Snowflake. Mm-hmm. So yes, the technologies have evolved, but our job is to ensure that if we're protecting the world's data, hundreds of exabytes of it, we feed that data into a Databricks. And that's a novel concept. Nobody in our space has built that catalog to be able to feed into these data lakes. And that's why Databricks was actually one of the other announcements we made yesterday. So I think if you think about the ServiceNow announcement for that agent resilience story and the Databricks announcement for this catalog story, those were the two highlights yesterday where I think that ServiceNow announcement and the Databricks announcement.
Yeah, and I think that also the need that we see for high horizontal scalability across different use cases and touches. Talk about how that translates to NVIDIA. I know you mentioned NVIDIA, that you're going to have some activity there. We both know Jensen in his speech. He says computer science on stage more than any CEO I know. I mean, you have to work on that, Sanjay. He says it like 6 times in a keynote. He says
he's an amazing.
He says computer science, distributed computing. So clearly AI factories are pumping out tokens and driving intelligence. Physical AI is a big theme, and robotics. That's the two worlds coming together. So as you look at your enterprise, what is NVIDIA enabling you? More horsepower, supercomputing capabilities? Are you getting leverage out of the performance of, say, the GPUs and the systems? And is there an ecosystem play with things that they've been expanding, because they've been really rolling out their ecosystem?
Let's back up for just a second and just talk about what an incredible moment we are. I think Jensen is the Steve Jobs of the AI era, the godfather of AI. People went to WWDC and the Apple launch events to watch Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
And I think in the cloud world, they went initially in the SaaS world to Benioff and then Andy Jassy. His 3-hour lectures were amazing. If you're in the AI world, you must be at GTC, because this person gives you a complete, from the hardware all the way to software, a 3-hour lecture. I mean, he's a professor at Jensen. Yeah. So it's amazing.
And he's completely transparent and authentic.
He doesn't
have the canned answers.
There are lines of people at the San Jose SAP Center lining up to get to the show. I mean, I'm fortunate to have a VIP seat next week. You'll be there, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So the way we think about it, when we built this solution, I went to him. I'd known him from my VMware days. I went to Satya and a few other friends and said, we have a large amount of data. Can we build a chat GPT-like capability on top of this data? And he and others opened my eyes to RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. I had no idea. John, if you'd asked me what RAG was, I would have told you a piece of cloth you wipe your windshield with, okay? 2 years ago.
Retrieval Augmentation Generation.
But now, I'm like, this is so exciting. So we had our computer scientists build. We were the first company. We applied for a patent to be the first company that uses RAG for backup use cases. Jensen saw this and said, this is amazing. If you're backing up the world's data and you're building Gaia, I'd like you to build Gaia, this RAG-based application, on top of my platform, the NVIDIA Enterprise AI platform. Now, for me, what's it in for me to do that? Well, the Enterprise AI platform of NVIDIA, think of NVIDIA as a GPU, CUDA on top of that, sort of like an OS layer, and then this Enterprise AI platform. If I build on that platform, I get my app to run on top of AWS, Azure, Google, Oracle, and on-prem for free, because he's building his platform on all of those 5 environments. So it was an easy answer. They put money into the company, exclusively in one company in this space, us, and we're working very closely with them every month.
That's a huge endorsement from NVIDIA
and
to invest
listen,
in
they
Cohesity.
take their engagement. We're a much smaller company than them. They are.
They're pretty big.
Big,
4
but
trillion
we're in the
market cap.
We're multi-billion, but
We're not public yet, though. We'll get to that later.
But we'll get that later. But anyway, nonetheless, he has one of his top executives, Kerry Brisky, check in on us every month. And it allows us to build our product. And they're constantly asking us, how are you using our platform? Can you use this library better? And I find that co-innovation with NVIDIA makes us a better AI company.
Their co-design philosophy, and Carrie's, by the way, CUBE alumni as well. She's been on the CUBE multiple times.
She's fantastic.
They lean in, and they're technical.
Very.
They're not just hand-waving. No. They engage. They are intentional, and they co-design.
I mean, many of them are PhDs. So let's talk about it. They're deep technical people.
All right, so are you going to get any value on the performance side? Because we're seeing NVIDIA also accelerating more performance that used to have, how do I say this? In security specifically, there's always overhead associated with certain things if you did in software. But now that we have like high performance.
Stay tuned. Next week.
Okay, you got some.
Jensen's going to be talking about it, and he's asked us for performance data before and after. And one of the things that we would not be able to do is build this RAG application on CPUs. It requires GPUs, so that's very clear. I mean, it's just a performance difference between traditional CPUs and GPUs. But many of his libraries provide even faster performance before and after. And I don't want to let the cat out of the bag, but he is really eager to see that, and we're feeding him some of the information we're seeing in performance. Performance is a key factor. Everybody wants something faster. And we are in a really prime position to use their libraries and show him and customers how this particular capability is faster.
I mean, you can get so much more value. I almost connect the dots right in real time. I don't want to spill them beans a little bit. I mean, you can see things early, the predictive nature of what to prepare, all kinds of cool stuff. Okay, so let's okay, go ahead.
I was going to say, it's a little bit like, I don't know, pick your favorite company. Like, if you had a front row seat to work with an iPhone in 2004, 2005, 2006, 2007, you were incredible, right?
Yeah.
Look at that, right? So I just think like this is a once-in-a-time era. You want to stay close to the following 5 or 6 companies in AI. NVIDIA, one of the public strike, probably I'd rank Google first, AWS, Azure, and then Anthropic, OpenAI. Those 6 companies are driving AI. And we're very fortunate to work all with all 6
Google has really turned up the heat. In the past 2 years, in the past year with Gemini.
Gemini's legit.
And they're expanding their CapEx, ramping up to Amazon Web Services levels. They're looking good right now.
So is Anthropic. So my view is like years in, the platform for all of them will be NVIDIA. Which LLM is going to win? I use all of them, John. I hope you do too, right?
Of course.
You got
they all
Claude,
have different answers.
You got Gemini, you got ChatGPT.
They all got kind of the same answer and different kind of like check. I always check my model, see which one spits out. Remember that book that Jeffrey Moore wrote called Inside the Tornado?
We were there.
It was a must-read book in business school. I remember when I was getting my MBA. It was basically, if you're inside the tornado, you're good. If you're not, you get thrown out. The NVIDIA is the tornado, and the hyperscalers are in there too. So you got all this distributed computing hybrid. Again, we've talked about that for now almost a decade. Full-on distributed computing hybrid cloud. So everything's a node. AI factories at the edge. I wrote a big report out at MWC of hyperconverged edge, which we think will happen. That's going to happen. So you're going to have AI factories everywhere. You're going to have all these data processing plants. Quantum will process materials and RF. So the world of computing, Sanjay, is changing. So I have to ask you, what's your vision of, as you guide Cohesity, with all the assets, you're partnering with all the key players, you're inside the tornado. What's the strategy? What's the 20-mile stare for Cohesity as you guys probably go public soon?
You mentioned one of those things that we have to watch very closely. What is the unit of compute as we need to do algorithms faster, right? CPUs, GPUs, quantum. So we're watching very closely. In security, quantum's going to have some enormous impact on encryption algorithms, a variety of things that could help us because we're a security company. We're watching very closely techniques of storage, right? You moved from tape. Remember, this industry moved from tape to disk to flash to other forms of QLC. There's a variety of things. And there's other companies doing creative stuff in that area, like Vast is doing some good stuff there. You can learn from all these companies. Then we watch very closely what's happening at the cloud layer. Do you go containers, virtual machines, containers, serverless?
Yeah.
So I think for me as a computer scientist who started off in the analytics world, that's what I did at SAP, in the applications world at SAP, to then infrastructure and security at VMware, and now obviously in the data security area, it's a fascinating time.
So, a lot of the conventional wisdom is like, oh, SaaS apocalypse is going to take away companies. There's clearly, I kind of poo-pooed that, but you bring them back to the Steve Jobs moment, is that I interviewed the co-founder of Nest, co-founders of Nest, and we were talking about this SaaS apocalypse, and they're like, well, if you build a better product, doesn't matter who tries to commoditize the software, what's the moat, what's the competitive advantage. And he said at the time, the big debate inside Apple, where he was working with Steve Jobs on, was when should we launch the iPhone? And the debate was the iPod's killing. It was the #1 cash cow at that time. And so they had to cannibalize their own product and brought out not just an iPod replacement, camera, computer, Apple Store platform. So the integrated product became a game changer. RIM had the same opportunity, BlackBerry. So did Nokia. They died, Apple won. So we're kind of in the same mode with AI. So I have to ask you, as you look at the product, you're in security, data security is the hottest area, AI infrastructure is building out. Does Cohesity have that new thing that transitions the old to the new? And what's your thinking around that, if that's kind of a metaphor?
I think it's the right analogy. I started my first job at Apple. I think if you go back and look at that history of the iPod and when the iPhone came out, circa 2007 or so, he could have launched the iPad before the iPhone, but he stalled the iPad, got the iPhone out, and that launched the iPhone. Remember what he said? This is a phone, this is a music player, this is an internet navigator all in one. It was a beautiful launch, right? So we have sort of a 3-act story of what we're doing at the company. The roots of this company is the world's first and best zero-trust platform built immutable to store lots of data. Mohit, the founder, built a supersonic platform built for security where the speed of recovery is second to none. We built on that foundation now, that data platform. That's what we have. A second act of security now. Okay, that started off as mostly a data management and somewhat security pieces, but now we have very sophisticated cyber vaulting, threat protection, application recovery, clean room recovery, and now data security posture management, a 5-step cyber resilience framework that we pioneered in close concert with our CISOs. That's Act 2. Okay, and we announced a number of those yesterday at our event. Great support. By the way, we had JP Morgan, we had Bank of New York, okay, and we had Cencora, the former AmerisourceBergen. Great customers, CISOs and CIOs talking about it. Act 3 is all about AI and agents, okay? Both playing defense on agents and playing offense with AI on the data pieces of it. I think those 3 acts are going to provide us a lot of ammunition.
Yeah.
We have 13,000 customers. Many of our customers all of our 13,000 customers are in Act 1, okay? They're doing a lot with the core data protection assets. Thousands are now in Act 2. Hundreds in Act 3. But I'd like to get all of our customers on all 3 acts. Right?
And the progression's going there.
Very well.
All right, Sanjay, I want to wrap up by just getting your feedback on the customer event you had in New York. I know it's a roadshow. You had kind of a customer focus in these areas. Are the geographies different? You see sovereign clouds, now sovereign AI. I'm sure international is going to be a big discussion. What are you hearing from your customers? What are the burning issues? What's their opportunity? What are some of the drivers for them? What are they thinking about?
Yeah. If you take our customer base now, 13,000, we have the largest in our market, the highest market share, and the biggest enterprise customers rely on us for resilience. So you take the banks who are the Bank of JP Morgan, Bank of New York, Cencora is in the healthcare industry. What they look for us are 5 S's: speed, scale, security, smarts, and simplicity, okay? And they're constantly giving us feedback. They picked us often for 1 or 2 of those 3 of those S's and how we make those 5 S's better. And you're constantly asking. We added probably hundreds of features for one particular bank because I knew that if I get that bank right, the other banks are going to be smaller use cases of that big bank. And that's how we roll. And we do the same thing.
That's really about scalability.
Totally, right? But the features you add based on, we have a very simple principle how we run the company. Innovate the best product, think iPhone, think Apple, and then be obsessed with the customer. Whoever your best customer obsession example, I mean, even in tech, Nordstrom's a good customer obsession example. They obsess about the customer. You build a great product and you obsess about the customer, you build a great company. I think that's how Andy's built AWS.
Are you hearing from them that there are certain things that are blockers? Is it market timing?
Yeah, let's talk about one of the things you brought, which is sovereign cloud.
Yeah.
Okay, I think what's also happening is outside the US, maybe because of tariffs or a variety of other aspects, certain countries are saying we need to ensure our data stays in, pick your favorite country in Europe, Germany, France, Netherlands, Nordics, or Middle East. As a result, everyone's having to adapt to saying, what does that mean now? And we partnered very closely with many service providers who are there. Maybe like a Swisscom, or a Deutsche Telecom, or an Airtel, or whatever have you. And the public clouds are also building sovereign clouds. And we have to adjust to that because the reality is everyone's not going to do it. One of our Netherlands customers said, I want to use Gaia, this AI product, but the data cannot leave the Netherlands. So we worked with NVIDIA to bring the stack on-prem. So I think one of the things you have to do, VMware did this well, SAP did this well, is you have to adjust to the locale you're in. And as a global company, we were about an 80% North America business 2 years ago when it was Cohesity standalone, number 7 in the space. As we came together with the acquisition of Veritas, we're now 50-50. So our business is very global, very international, and we have to now adjust to those, kind of natures of how those customers want to play. And it's very, and for me, given a lot of my time at SAP was working with German companies, I know a lot of how the Europeans think. I'm also on the board of Philips, so I go to Netherlands a fair amount. I think the European companies and many of the Asian companies are going to guide U.S. companies with us as to how we balance the best for the U.S. and for many of the other big GDPs in the world.
Yeah, well, congratulations on the success. I know business is going great. You mentioned some highlights. While I have you here, I want to get your take on the telecom market. MWC was just there. We were there for the 4th straight year with theCUBE. We published our report. I put out.
We were there too. I sent some of my team there.
I put out my hyperconverged at the edge, which was getting massive circulation. And the idea is that AI factories are going to come to the edge. So intelligence is going to be injected into the telco infrastructure. They got the physical plant. Physical AI is coming to telco. You have a lot of experience in this area. And they have the data, they got the network, they got the customers, they got the footprints, towers, central offices. I mean, a small retrofit, $90 billion retrofit for one carrier could change the game. What would be your view on their opportunity now? Best ever? Last chance?
They have a chance to innovate. First off, many of the world's telcos, it's one of our top 5, maybe our 4th biggest vertical in industry. So we have several of the US telcos running protect their data with us. Many of them in Europe, in Asia. We have very strong presence in the telco market. So I think they're also now starting to see the data they collect with its call data records or others could become a pipeline for AI apps. I think the challenge they have, because they have so much assets, right? Can they innovate at the pace of these newer companies that don't have assets? Whether it's a media company like a Meta or some of the other ones that are just without assets but just focused on content. And you've seen some of them shedding content and focused on infrastructure. But I think, listen, they are a fabric of
AI infrastructure is a great tell sign. Not a lot of CapEx to add to the existing footprints, and sovereign cloud and telco kind of go together.
Especially, as you talked about in Mobile World Congress in Barcelona, European telcos and the Asian telcos have an opportunity to really build sovereign clouds. The question is, are they interested in building enterprise data centers, right? Telefonica, you take any of these big ones. If they have the wherewithal, I think they can provide for their country. Usually in every country, there's 1 or 2 or 3 main telcos. It isn't there's only 30 telcos in the world that really matter. And you probably saw that at Mobile World Congress.
We interviewed most of them. What's interesting is that the telco sovereign cloud conversation about GDPR and data privacy, the AI conversation is more about revenue. And it's not about price per subscriber or per circuit or how much bandwidth we're selling. It's what services can I sell, and can I run an AI platform? That's a revenue in country. So a lot of people are talking about, hey, let's service our own people and keep the money, and I think not the data, just the money too.
If you're a dominant telco in each of the top 10, 20 GDPs, you go country by country, you have an opportunity to take advantage of that. right? Now the U.S. telcos are probably going to have to compete with the public clouds to do that because in the
they'll
U.S.
partner.
probably will put that in. They'll partner with them. But I think the European, Asian telcos have a tremendous opportunity.
Sanjay, great to see you. Thanks for coming into our new studio here at the NYSE. Of course, we have
Fantastic.
Palo Alto connecting Silicon Valley and Wall Street. We're covering the tech TV here, and technology is the market. The market's changed by technology. Every single vertical, all aspects of our life, physical and digital coming together in all areas. We're doing our part here in theCUBE to bring that to you. I'm John Furrier, host of theCUBE. Thanks for watching.